Happy Friday and welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We hope everybody had an absolutely incredible Christmas and holiday season with the people that you love and that you enjoyed a wild day in sports. And we are going to spend the next hour breaking down all of Caroline. I rarely say inexcusable, and that is the only word I can think of when I think about the effort we saw yesterday from the Detroit Lions, eliminated by the Minnesota Vikings, eliminated by a team that had a net 3 yards passing total.
Yep.
They absolutely get beat down by a Minnesota team that had nothing to play for. And all of a sudden, the Vikings get a huge win and the Lions season is done. This was totally a disaster in every possible way for Detroit.
A pathetic effort, I think, is a fair word to use as well. Because when you have one team who has literally nothing to play for, playing with a backup quarterback statistically eliminated from the postseason, and then another team who has been in a Super Bowl window, who had only a 6% chance of making the playoffs, who absolutely positively needed to win out the rest of the season in order to keep their playoff hopes alive, and that's the effort that we get from that team. You lost by double digits to a team who had 6 net passing yards. What in the world is that? What happened to a Lions team that was biting off kneecaps? What happened to a Lions team that was always galvanized, that always played tough? What happened to a Dan Campbell coach team that it didn't matter if the Lions didn't have the better roster? It didn't matter if the Lions were outmatched. They weren't going to get out-toughed, and they weren't going to get out-physicaled. What happened to that team? Because I saw a Lions team that I would turn the ball over 6 times. Let's start with that. That's probably the story of the game. Jared Goff and his ball security, probably the story of the game. And the Lions just got bullied on both lines of scrimmage. I do want to give all of the credit in the world to that Vikings defense, because while Max Brosmer and the Vikings quarterback situation, maybe lack thereof, is the story of this game and really the story of the Vikings season as a whole, that's a nasty defense. And credit to Brian Flores for what his unit has been doing all season long, and specifically what they were able to do yesterday. But this is a Lions team that was supposed to be tough. This is a Lions team that is supposed to have such strong culture, and we didn't see that yesterday. So incompetent effort, pathetic effort, and just a brutal season for the Detroit Lions. And maybe we should have seen this coming with the brain drain of Aaron Glenn leaving for the New York Jets and Ben Johnson leaving. And it's no coincidence that Ben Johnson steps into Chicago, and now Chicago looks like a legitimate playoff contender, Super Bowl contender, perhaps. But man, I didn't expect to fall off this drastic, Fitzy.
Well, I think your coordinator point is an important one here, because at some point in every quarterback's life, as a quarterback ascends, in the beginning, the quarterback needs help, prop them up. And then at some point, we presume that that quarterback is going to be able to take whatever's around them and prop that up, right? Like that's the natural progression for a quarterback. I think head coach is very similar. So I look at Dan Campbell and I say, even if you were propped up for a bit by your coordinators, we listened to all of the Lions players this year when they questioned, sometimes aggressively, how much we were questioning the coordinators. I'm looking at Dan Campbell and saying, your job, your main function is to run an organization that is absolutely seamless, right? Your job sometimes as a head coach is to be able to constantly replace those coordinators. The fact that they haven't been able to do it, that's not shocking. We see teams all the time take a step back when a coordinator changes. But the fact that guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown spent the summer saying, hey, we know Paul. Like, don't worry about who's coaches. We know how to play. Like, everybody in this building knows what they're doing. Do they? I mean, because now you're looking at a team that is watching the window slam shut. And this frustrates me for Lions fans, because you've endured 30, 40, 50 years of suffering to finally get to the point where you're a good football team. You're a model franchise. You're doing the right things the right way. But, man, you're in salary cap hell starting next year. You got some big numbers you're going to have to adjust. You got young guys you're going to have to get paid. Once you start to win, things don't get easier. They get tougher. And now I'm looking around saying, okay, Dan Campbell turned this thing around. But he's got to do a much better job of identifying the right coaches in the building, of making sure that they stabilize this ship, because otherwise this moment is going to be just that, a fleeting moment. And this Lions team is too talented for that. But what do you do when Jared Goff goes out and has that sort of a game. And then you have to look at the future and say, look at some of the salary cap numbers around Jared Goff. Look at some of the salary cap numbers around the Lions. And all of a sudden, I'm wondering, do they have the right pieces in place to be able to capitalize on this moment? Because it feels like the Super Bowl window has slipped through their fingers.
And it could be easy to say, look, the Lions just needed to get healthy defensively. You're going to have Brian Branch that comes back. You know, you're getting Amon-Ra St. Brown back next year. That you've got Jahmyr Gibbs back next year. That you've got all of these, Aiden Hutchinson is back next year. You've got all of these pieces. And look, any good team, any team that's been in a Super Bowl window is going to lay a couple of duds every once in a while. It's easy to justify that. None of that is wrong. If that's how you feel, if you're a Lions fan or not waking up today and saying, man, tough season for the Lions that got riddled by injury, they'll be back next year, I don't necessarily think that that's wrong or the incorrect take or feeling about this team. But also, I think we have to acknowledge that maybe Jared Goff just is who he is and was elevated for so many years by Ben Johnson, in addition to Amon-Ra St. Brown, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and all of the pieces around Detroit. But that if you take one of those factors out and you take Ben Johnson out and you don't have one of the brightest young offensive minds in the National Football League, then Jared Goff's warts show themselves so much more, which is exactly what we saw yesterday. And I think if you want to talk about the Detroit offseason to-do list, at the top of that list, along with bolstering up the defensive line, bolstering up the offensive line, a few pieces here and there, it's getting a new offensive coordinator. Because I think what I saw yesterday, Fitzy, is I don't know if Dan Campbell can be a Super Bowl winning coach without having elite coordinators around him. I have questioned if Dan Campbell is too coordinator dependent in order to win a Super Bowl. Because if you don't get this next offensive coordinator hire right, you are wasting valuable time and you are wasting valuable peaks and valuable windows that the Lions are currently in. Look, Dan Campbell's not the only quote-unquote coordinator-dependent head coach that we've ever seen in the National Football League. Sometimes head coaches are just really good galvanizing guys, really good locker room guys, and they lean on the brain trust and the X's and O's of coordinators in order to really do a heavy load of the on-the-field stuff where the head coach can just kind of be a figurehead for that team. That's exactly what Dan Campbell is, and he's great at it. Don't get me wrong. But you need great coordinators around you in order to be a Super Bowl caliber team. And that's what we saw for so many years with the Detroit Lions. That's not what we see now. And I think yesterday was the perfect example and was on full display that Dan Campbell might just be far too coordinator dependent for the Lions to continue to be Super Bowl contenders without Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson.
A lot of questions left to be answered in Detroit for what is now a very disappointing season. Now, while you were watching Christmas Day football games, there was also Christmas Day NBA games. And some of the biggest stories that came out of that actually came from Charles Barkley and what he had to say. Charles Barkley said, and this is the quote talking about Roger Goodell, said, the NFL got greedy and started adding Christmas games. We used to have this day to ourselves, but Roger Goodell and them pigs at the NFL always want to hog every day of the week now. Christmas is an NBA day. Caroline, I struggle with this because Christmas being an NBA or NFL day is not up to Charles Barkley. It's not up to Roger Goodell. It's not up to me or you. It's up to every single person that makes the conscious decision to watch what they want to watch. This isn't suddenly an NFL popular day because of what Roger Goodell did. This is an NFL popular day because more people are going to watch the NFL than watch the NBA. And it's just going to always be that way in the current environment. The way it sits right now, I hear him calling them pigs, and I just laugh at that because realistically, all Roger Goodell and the NFL have done is identify a market, and they have fed that market. I cannot blame them for putting games on Christmas Day when fact is people want to watch it.
Yeah, look, sorry, Charles, but this is business. I don't think that Roger Goodell is in the business of holding everyone's hand and saying, okay, you get this day, and then you get this day, and then we get this day. No, it's not Roger Goodell's fault that everything that the NFL touches turns to gold. It's not Roger Goodell's fault that any time that there is anything NFL related on television, it's going to be consumed by tens of millions of people. This is nothing new. We know that the NFL can make literally anything a made for TV event. So if the NFL wants to play on Christmas Day, so be it. This is a business. If you and I, Fitzy, are salespeople and you have one certain territory that is yours, but I'm just a better salesperson. What's stopping me from coming into your territory and your sales territory and taking it over? Sorry, I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to do my job here. I do understand that that Christmas Day has been NBA's day for so long, but the onus is not on the NFL for not touching what hasn't traditionally been theirs. The onus is on the NBA to make sure that they can protect the day that has traditionally been theirs. I hear Charles Barkley, but sorry, dude, like this is a business, and it's nobody's fault for wanting to capitalize on days that they feel like they can own. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon because it's been a wild success. So I think Charles Barkley just sounds kind of whiny. Don't point the finger at the NFL, point the finger at the NBA.
You mentioned wild success. I got some numbers for you from 2024, last Christmas. All right, not the song, great song, but last Christmas,
Gave you my heart.
Christmas Day. Thank you so much. That's perfect.
You're
Last
so welcome.
Christmas, the NBA averaged 5.25 million viewers across all their platforms for Christmas Day, and that was bolstered by the Lakers Warriors, which pulled in almost 8 million viewers, which was the highest watched game in 5 years on Christmas at 8 million viewers. So those are exceptional numbers for the NBA. Point of reference: the NBA or the NFL Christmas Day 2024 on Netflix had an average of over 24 million U.S. viewers per game, nearly 65 million U.S. viewers, unique U.S. viewers in total. So when you talk about Christmas Day, it is clear who owns it. It belongs to the NFL. And the thing of it is, I'm just tired of people whining about it. I'm tired of everybody complaining about it like this is some revolutionary thing. In fact, look just last week at the college football playoff. Caroline and I love the sport of college football. We cover it. It's part of how we make our living. I love college football. The two games in college football in the playoffs, it went up against meaningless NFL games, got absolutely throttled in the ratings. And those were playoff games. Why? Because you cannot compete with the NFL. That's just fact. And so for Chuck to bury his head in the sand on this, to me, at some point, media right now is no different than championships. They're not giving out. You don't just give Christmas Day to the NBA because that's what Charles Barkley wants. Like, you don't give the NBA Christmas Day because there's a group of fans that think that they own it because that's where it's been. The day belongs to who goes out and gets it. And at the end of the day, even with terrible quarterback matchups, with quarterbacks that we've never heard of, and games that had absolutely no consequence, the Cowboys Commanders, no consequence to that game. The Lions were eliminated by a guy nobody's ever heard of for the Vikings, and we had a nightcap game where somehow, some way, it came down to the wire with the Chiefs having nothing to play for and a guy on the field people didn't even know was in the NFL. That was the slate that they put on standalone streaming services, and that slate is still going to kick the snot out of the NBA that day. If that isn't proof positive on who owns the day, I don't know what is. So I'm sorry, Chuck, that you feel like it's pigs, and I respect the hell out of the work you do in media. You're wrong about this one. What the NFL is doing is serving the broadest set of the audience, and the broadest set of the audience loves their NFL. All right, we got a lot to get into from the course of the weekend. We're going to preview also some of the games coming up the way only this show can. It's time for Ho, Ho, Ho or No, No, No. Can't wait. Coming next. Look at that. It is time for Can't Wait. But no Bart Scott this week. Bart has been replaced. If there's anybody that could ever replace Bart Scott, it's Santa Claus. And, this every time we do this, we look at different games and we decide if they're a Bart or a fart. That's what we usually do. But in honor of the Christmas season, we're going with the Santa theme. So the game's either a ho, ho, ho or a no, no, no. All right. So I think did you like my Santa? Like
I would say it came from the diaphragm. That was good.
Thank you. I'm practicing for my future in a fat suit. All right, so we'll look at some games and figure out whether it's the ho 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 or the no no no. Let's start with Texans Chargers. What do you got on this? Ho 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 or no no no?
Now, initially, right now, I'm going to say. Ho, ho,
Come on, you can do it.
I don't quite have the same depth of ho 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 that you have, Fitzy. So right now it's ho ho ho. Look, the Chargers can still win the AFC West. You look at the Texans, who week over week and month over month in the season have revealed themselves to be Super Bowl contenders. Like on paper, in theory, this game right now is a ho ho ho. But I think after the first quarter, I'm going to be like, no, 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 no. Whenever I see Justin Herbert get absolutely murdered out there on the football field. That Texans defensive front, the best in the NFL, hands down, point blank period, against that Chargers offensive line that actually they called me yesterday and said, hey, any chance you could, make it out here, for the game tomorrow, maybe throw some pads on you, because that's how desperate the Chargers are in the offensive line. So right now it's a ho, ho, ho. I fear it's going to be a no, no, no after maybe 5 minutes of gameplay, 10 minutes if we want to be generous.
You're not wrong. This game though, it's a ho ho ho. This game Jingle Bell rocks for me, and I'll say it rocks for me because of what's at stake. At some point, we're gonna have to figure out who these two teams particularly are. I'm not sure that there are two teams harder to project for the playoffs than what we've seen here, because you're right, the Chargers are decimated, but that man right there is C.J. Stroud. I just watched that offense struggle against a putrid Raiders team. Now, was that the Texans looking ahead to this matchup? I guess that's what we want to make it. But let's be honest. If we'd seen the same productivity from this offense, but they were the Philadelphia Eagles, we'd be yelling and screaming about it, right? Like, I don't know why we're not paying more attention to how broken the offense has been, but it has been broken. So this is a real test game to me. It's a real chance to learn which one of these teams we think can make a playoff run instead of just being a pretty good football team. So I'm in on that being a ho-ho-ho. What about this one? Ravens, Packers. Should note here, Lamar is doubtful. Every quarterback for the Packers is on the injury list right now. Is this a ho-ho-ho or a no?
No, Lamar, that's a no, no, no for me. Obviously, we saw Lamar get he left that game against the Patriots early. He's been dealing with a back contusion. He was able to get through practice for several days with the back contusion, but yesterday didn't practice. So if Lamar's not going to play, no. After the day that we had yesterday on Christmas Day, I can't watch any more backup quarterbacks. I can't do it. It's so hard to watch. It is so brutal. I can't believe that that's what we got for Christmas Day. No disrespect to Tyler Huntley, but if we don't get to see Lamar, that's going to be a no from me, dog. Just like the tiniest bit.
You know what? So I'll be honest. I had this fully marked as a ho-ho-ho. And the more you talk about it, the more I realize this has all the potential to be a no. And it's just because it's going to be ugly. Like, the Packers have so much to play for, certainly, but the Packers are decimated by their own injuries, as we've talked about. Jordan Love obviously missing time, and then Malik Willis hurts the shoulder when he comes in, so we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like. Josh Jacobs has been trying to will himself through this thing, hurt week in and week out. Watson has been hurt week in and week out. It just feels like the Packers are already a shell of themselves, and they're taking on a Ravens team that the Packers need this win. I'm not sure how Baltimore gets this win with no Lamar. You're right. I thought this was a ho, but now it's a no. What about this one? All right, we'll go to the NFC. The Seahawks. All right, the Seahawks taking on the Panthers, the plucky Panthers, Carolina Panthers, Seattle Seahawks. Ho ho ho. No.
Huge ho. This is a big time ho. Big time ho. This is my Panthers, your Panthers, the people's Panthers, they are feeling it, taking down the Bucks, taking down the Rams, taking down the Packers this season. Why not? The Panthers are collecting Super Bowl contenders like infinity stones this year. I am so here for this game. I'm also expecting the house to be absolutely packed in Charlotte this weekend. Even last week when the Bucks were in town, sold out crowd. It was loud. It was raucous. Now you get the Seahawks and Sam Darnold, one of the best teams, not just in the NFC, in the NFL. Legitimate Super Bowl contender Seattle Seahawks, when the Panthers have everything to play for. The NFC South making a run for make a push for the postseason, rather. I am so here for this game. Huge ho ho ho.
Yeah, you're right, 1,000%. And part of what makes me just a little nervous about this game is that we've seen such a weird version of the Seahawks of late, right? Like the Seahawks offense is taking so long to get going every single week. And part of that is I think their commitment to establishing the run takes a little bit of time. But man, I don't love the way the Seahawks have looked on film compared to how I think they should look on paper over the course of the last month or so. Now they find a way late in games to make it happen. I don't love a slow start constantly against this Carolina Panthers team that I don't know what to make of the Panthers, right? Like we've talked about it so much. They got the 2 losses to the Saints. They have losses to pretty good teams along the way. Are the Panthers for real, or are the Panthers just sort of in this conversation somewhere? I think the Panthers are ahead of schedule. I think the Seahawks are truly a Super Bowl contender. I would love to see that be very clear in this game. So I think it's a ho, ho, ho because of everything that's on the line to prove it in the process. What about this one? How about Jags, Colts? Jags, Colts, ho, ho, ho. No, no, no.
Old ho, can I say that? Old ho ho ho.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Always a great opportunity to see Philip Rivers out there doing his thing. I'll say that this game is very much so a ho ho ho. The AFC South has been a wildly interesting division. The Jags deserve so much credit. I mean, hey, we've even heard Jags players saying, "Hey, don't jump on the bandwagon now." I am. I am squarely on the Jags bandwagon. We have been seeing Trevor Lawrence play the best football of his career over the last several weeks, and he's going up against a Colts defense that's good, not great, not overly intimidating. So I'm excited to see if we can see Trevor Lawrence put together yet another elite performance. So this is a ho 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 for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, realistically at this point, I don't trust the Broncos anymore. The way they looked against
Nope.
the Jags, and then the way they looked against the Chiefs, I don't trust the Broncos. I think they're a very good football team, but man, it just doesn't look the way I think it should look at this point. The Patriots, I maybe are clear cut here, but I don't know. You could make an argument to me that the Jags are the best team in the AFC, and if I don't love anybody. Why not love the Jags at this point? You look at their odds versus the Texans. I don't even think this is just a Jags-Texans conversation. The Jags right now are better than the Texans. The question is, are the Jags better than the Patriots? And if that game was played in Jacksonville, I would think yes. If that's in New England, gets a little bit hairier. This is a big game for the Jags because they are trying to fight for their playoff seeding. They are trying to fight for their positioning. I think they have a real opportunity to show exactly who they are. The Colts have played better than we expected with Philip Rivers. I respect that, but they shouldn't be able to match the Jags blow for blow in this game. I think this is a big moment for the Jags to sort of for the Jags to separate themselves from the Colts. What about let's go over to this one. 2 teams that we're trying to figure out: the Bucks and the Dolphins. All right, the Dolphins had nothing to play for, then they went on a run. The Bucks have everything to play for. They can't get healthy. Ho ho ho. No, no, no.
Yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog. Let me apologize to the entire state of Florida because this game's going to be gross. Quinn Ewers making his debut for the Miami Dolphins. There's at least a little bit of razzle dazzle to that. There's some drama lingering over the Miami Dolphins of what the future of Tua Tagovailoa is going to be. But I think that the Dolphins over the last couple of weeks, once their 4-game winning streak was snapped, became a much more intriguing story off the field than they're an intriguing product on the field, it's a great opportunity for the Bucks to get a get-right game, especially when every single game, every single snap, every single result matters for them moving forward in order to secure the division and make a push for the postseason. But this is a Bucks team that's banged up and has not been playing a spectacular brand of football against a Miami team that's totally and completely waving the white flag. That's kind of a dud, in my opinion. Fitzy, what do you think? What do you say?
Yeah, I'm so out on this game. This is a no. This is like having to sit down and rub Meemaw's bunions at Christmas. No, I'm out. I'm out completely. I know it's that bad. This Bucks team has lost 3 straight in their own division. They lost to the Saints, the Falcons, the Panthers. 2 of those three teams suck. In fact, if you go back even farther than that, they've lost 6 of 7. I mean, this point, when you talk about the losing that is happening for Tampa Bay, it's catastrophic. This is a get-right game. I think they need this game, even though, above and beyond whatever we're talking about for the postseason, I think the Bucks need this win just to try and right the feels towards the end of the season, because it has gone off the rails for Tampa Bay. So I think Tampa Bay needs this game, but boy, it's ugly. How about this one? I will give you one. I'll give you a little bit of a little controversy adding this one to the list. Giants at the Raiders. Look, all right, let me sell you on it. Let me tell you why it's a ho-ho-ho, all right? This game is so bad. This game is so bad. Brock Bowers added to injured reserve. Max Crosby on the did not participate in practice list for a couple of straight days. I don't think he's going to play in this game. The Giants have basically told you about half their team is inactive. This game is the closest we have ever seen to 2 teams just loudly screaming, yo, 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 we are tanking for the first pick in the NFL draft, and there's nothing you can do about it. We yell about tanking all the time in the NBA, but my God, look at this list. Look at this, no practice list. You're going to get 2 teams that are actively trying not to win because they both want the first pick in the draft for different reasons. I love all of this. The drama of the loss. I've never rooted for a loss in my entire life as a Raiders fan. This Sunday will be the first time I've ever come in and said, screw it, let's lose a football game today. Come on, have I sold you on it?
No, it was a valiant effort, though, and I appreciate that. But let's not bring Santa into this. If you are looking forward to this game, if this game for you is a ho ho ho, put your shoes on and maybe go take a walk, call your grandmother, breathe some fresh air. Don't do this to yourself. This is such a no. I mean, we've talked so much about how the bottom of the NFL this year, it's crowded with the Saints and the Browns and the Titans and the Raiders and the Giants. So when you're talking about so many miserable teams in the NFL and you have a matchup between 2 of the worst ones, no thank you. I'm okay. All right. I hope you enjoy this game, Fitzy. I do, as a Raiders fan. I hope that you love it, and I hope that you take in every single moment of it. But for me, this is a no.
We have all offseason to get into the deep dive numbers that I have on why picking first overall is not the greatest thing for your franchise. I'm win-win either way, but you are right. This game is, I'm going to watch it in my Christmas onesie, though, and I'm still going to celebrate every single second of it. Speaking of Christmas, thank you so much. We have a Christmas day full of NBA games to break down. Kelly Eco going to join us next. We'll get his thoughts on the Spurs taking down the Thunder. Nikola Jokic last night, 56 points, 16 boards, 15 assists, 2 blocks, partridge in a pear tree. Had a little bit of everything in this. The first 55-15-15 game we've ever seen. The Nuggets get the overtime win on Christmas. Here to break down the Joker and everything that happened on NBA Christmas, Kelly Eco, NBA national reporter for Yahoo Sports, joins us. Let's start there. I want to make sure I ask you this the right way. Do we give Jokic the appreciation his level of play deserves?
The short answer is no. I think once you become accustomed to greatness, I think we expect it so much that when it happens, like we saw last night, we just become numb to it. And this is a guy, the Nuggets are down 3 starters. He's having to produce 2K like numbers on a nightly basis, and still some people might not even bat an eye because, again, this is Nikola Jokic and he's done this for eons. And it's crazy to think that the NBA has a player like this at this efficiency, this age. Technically, you could still think that he could do this for another 5-6 years to go at this level and still might even not win 2 or 3 MVPs because of how numb we are as a society to it. I think there needs to be more appreciation for what he's doing on a nightly basis. He's literally carrying his team on his back. I think he's the MVP. I think that was decided a long time ago just because of what he's had to endure this season with Denver and the injuries and the changes and trying to keep up in the Western Conference. I think it's a no-brainer for me.
Is Jokic the best player in the NBA?
I think you can make that argument. I think it's a pretty safe argument to make, especially after games like this, because it's funny because Christmas Day is where a good chunk of the country tunes in for the first time, right? And they're flipping the channels with the kids in their onesie, opening to see who's playing who, and you see this Denver game against the Wolves, and you're looking at Jokic and saying, "Oh, this is the best player in the NBA. This is the draw. This is why I'm getting up to watch this game," and you can see clearly that even defensively, he's still keeping this team afloat. Offensively, he's doing everything. His efficiency is raised, assist percentage is raised, points per shot attempt is raised, and this is the actual definition of what an MVP is supposed to do, night in, night out. It's a no-brainer for me.
All right, let's take a look at one of the other outcomes here. Anthony Edwards hits the 3, sends the game into overtime, ejected with 20 seconds left to go in the game. What do you make of the ejection?
You can't do that on Christmas. Come on, man. If we're all about giving back and the spirit of Christmas cheer, and you can clearly see how dope this game is, so to speak, you can't throw Anthony out of the game. People have paid their money to come and see this guy play. It's a marquee matchup. You have Ant going against Jokic. The fans are getting into it. The crowd, like the teams are getting into it. You can clearly see why the league put this on the slate of Christmas Day games. You can't just do that. It's wrong. It's flat out wrong.
But
there should be an apology. The league should put out a statement. They should do anything to say this is our bad. They have the 2-minute report. They should have a 48-minute report. This is our bad. This is our bad. We made it.
But when we see that tweet that just came up, Scott Foster ejects him. Like, I am so tired of hearing the name Scott Foster. Like, I should not know a ref's name as a household name. At what point does the league just look around and say, hey, we got to find somebody? Like, it doesn't really matter about the quality of work. At this point, it just matters about the perception. Every damn time I hear Scott Foster's name.
Right. And that's one of the things where the players versus the officials and the coaches, there's enough tension. And we see this every year around this time, kind of building up towards the All-Star break. But when players and coaches are practically campaigning against the referees and the officials, even if maybe 30% of their claims are legitimate, there's enough of a voice of distraction or a voice of reason where if you're the league office, you kind of have to look at and say, okay, is this an actual problem? Should we actually take time to deal with this? Especially there's a commercial side to kicking Anthony Edwards out of a game like this on Christmas Day, where this is supposed to be one of your biggest draws, especially competing with the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Charles Barkley whining about having, NFL games on Christmas Day, a day that the NBA traditionally owns, and then the NBA puts out, maybe, purposely or intentionally diluting a product when you don't have Anthony Edwards out there on the court in overtime. But I do want to transition into what is becoming one of my favorite matchups to watch in the NBA, and that's Spurs Thunder. The Spurs take down the Thunder for the third time just in the month of December. Is Wemby officially OKC's kryptonite?
Yeah, he has to be. There's no doubt about it. The formula to beating Oklahoma City, a lot of teams can't do it because they don't have the size and the versatility that the Spurs have. But the sheer presence of Victor Wembanyama, you see it not always in the box score because you'll see teams take a bunch of threes. He's deterring shots from the restricted area. He's forcing teams to look for second and third opinions, on half court possessions. And him coming off the bench has really thrown a wrench into what opposing teams have to scheme, because now you can't just game plan to see Wemby for the first 5-6 minutes of the game. You have to accommodate for him coming off after the game, having sat down and seen what's going on and how to adjust and how to have his impact, even without touching the ball. And I think this Spurs team is so great because this month alone they've had 7 different leading scorers. This is a team that's built by the collective. They don't need any one player to dominate possessions. It's real ethical ball, as the kids will say. And I think from top to bottom, they're about as deep as any team in the NBA. And there's a reason why if you beat the Thunder 3 times in a month, you are a legitimate contender. So the Spurs are dangerous, and I think Victor is only getting better.
Are you concerned at all about OKC at this point?
I wouldn't say I'm concerned. I think a good part of the regular season is to, eat some humble pie and figure out that, a few weeks ago this team was 24-1, right? And they were the darlings of the NBA. They were already placed to be in June and repeat as champions. Now you're seeing the gap is closing a little bit. Detroit is good. San Antonio is good. The Rockets are good. New York is really good. There are teams that you're going to have to go through to get to the promised land. And I do think that if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, now is the time where you want to get embarrassed on a national stage, because now you can go back to square one, clean things up. You're still, 26-5 or 27-5. They're still an elite team, but it's been found out by one team in particular that has your number, that there should be some tweaks, some adjustments, and maybe it's the 2-3 zone that they use so much, or maybe it's the way that they compact the paint and result in a lot of kick out threes. There are things that even the great teams have to fix on the fly. And the good thing about these Christmas Day games is that you really want to win them. So when you don't, it forces you to put things in perspective and understand where you have to, fix your faults.
You mentioned the Thunder having some things to fix. I know another team in the West has some things to fix, and that's the Lakers. Despite Luka's
Yeah.
injury status kind of been lingering, he did give it a go last night, but Houston smoked him, absolutely smoked him. In your opinion, what's the biggest problem with the Lakers right now?
Athleticism and age. I think they're too old, too slow. It's hard when your 2 best players are Luka and LeBron, because you need a bunch of athletes around them. You saw the Rockets last night; they were running them in circles. Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason. These guys, even Kevin Durant at age 37, is still, running rings around these guys. So if you're the Lakers, you need to, make a trade now, sooner rather than later, and just get some athleticism. Just get some speed, some agility on the perimeter, on the wings. Defensively, you could shore up, that side of the ball. But the biggest thing is age. They're too old. They need to get quicker. It's so apparent that despite their elite skill level of Luka and LeBron, this is an athletes league. You need guys that can fill in those gaps, run down the channels, finish dobs, finish dunks, get on the break, easy buckets. This is a team that struggles to score in transition. So if you're the Lakers, you need to figure out how to acquire some athletes pretty quickly.
The Christmas Day slate of games started with me sitting on my couch looking up and saying, "Oh man, the Cavs are kicking the you know what out of the Knicks," and then coming back one cup of coffee later and saying, "Oh my God!" So what is it? Was this a Cavs meltdown or is this Knicks resilience? How do you sort of couch what we saw from this game?
It has to be a Cavs meltdown. When you're up, 15, 16, 17, on the road, you have to figure out how to close that game. Now, if you look at that game in a vacuum, Donovan Mitchell has to do way too much for this team on a nightly basis for them to have a chance at winning. Darius Garland needs to be. He had a 20-10 game, but on the whole, this is a team that just needs more out of that guard position. And they're 17-16. They're in a playing spot. It's time to, in my opinion, to break that up. You need to bring in something dynamic at the guard position. He's making the same amount of money as James Harden, John Morant, LaMelo Ball. If you're the Cavs and you were the best team in the East like 8 months ago, 7, 8 months ago, and in that short amount of time, you've fallen towards the bottom of the barrel in the East. In terms of playoff teams, that's unacceptable. And if you're Donovan Mitchell, you're talking to the front office like, I need some help. I need some more. We need to put more on the table if you want me to continue playing at this high level, or to make a playoff run, or to even get out of the play-in positions. You need to make a change, because that was not it.
We saw AD leave the game early yesterday against the Warriors with a groin injury. What's the latest that you're hearing on potential AD trade talks?
It's funny because Anthony Davis and Dallas as a whole, they're in this period of transition, if you want to call it that, where it's so obvious that this is Cooper Flagg's team. This team should be built around him, for the foreseeable future. And the pairing, as great as it looked on paper with Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, in reality, it will just never going to work. Anthony Davis came into camp out of shape, came into camp with a lengthy injury history, and as you've seen this season, it looks great when he's playing and healthy, but how often can you count on that? So, if there are teams, and there are teams around the league that are keeping tabs on what the Mavericks are going to do, if you're Dallas, I would just pull the trigger now and just send him on his way to a team that he can go play for a championship right now, and just really build around Cooper Flagg's talent, because he is an immensely talented kid. His skill set is lengthy. He can finish at the rim. He's improving his 3-point shot. As a playmaker, his reads are getting better. They're getting quicker, smoother, crisper. And you just need to move in that direction. Like, you firing, Nico Harrison was the first step in getting this team back on track. Trading Anthony Davis is the next shoe to drop.
You guys can follow him on Twitter, X, @KellyIko. That's IKO. Kelly, well, I don't know if it's going to be the weirdest trade deadline we've ever seen, the wildest trade deadline, but I know you'll be covering all of it, man. We appreciate all your help and all your insight. You got to come back and help us make sense of that when the chaos starts. So thanks for hanging out with us. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thanks for giving us some time this morning. Great stuff from Kelly, so much, always. All right. Coming up next, we're going to get you caught up on some breaking news regarding who's going to be the next head coach at Michigan. We'll tell you about it. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz hanging out with you on Yahoo Sports Daily. Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We want to get you caught up on some breaking news about the Michigan head coaching search. But first, Caroline, let's get to 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
Absolutely. We saw the Broncos get a win over the Chiefs, their first win in Arrowhead in several years. They finally break that streak at a win over Kansas City, a Patrick Mahomes-less Kansas City 20-13. Now, look, it was not pretty, but if you're a Broncos fan, it was beautiful because at this point, just win and keep your hopes alive for winning the division and getting the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. And I think there's 2 different ways that you can look at this game. On one hand, you could look at it and say, look, it was a scrappy, grinded out kind of win that the Broncos had several long drives. 14 plays for 8 minutes, 10 plays for 5 minutes, 16 plays for 8 minutes. They were eating up clock and able to maintain possession. And when the Broncos absolutely had to have it with the game tied midway through the 4th quarter, Bo Nix came up with a big play and was able to orchestrate a touchdown drive. And he was able to do what he needed to do for this team to win a football game. Now, that is true. All of those things are correct. On the other side, you could look at it and say that was an uninspiring offensive effort, and the Broncos just barely squeaked by a Chiefs team that was playing with a quarterback who had yet to attempt a pass in the NFL. I think both things can be true, and I think that comes to why we have some concerns about fully buying in to this Denver Broncos team as a legitimate Super Bowl contender if their offense looks as uninspiring as it did in Arrowhead yesterday. There's another big story coming from the other sideline, and that's Travis Kelce. Did we just see Travis Kelce play his final game at Arrowhead Stadium? If so, then salute to him. He will go down as one of the best to wear that uniform and one of the best to ever play that position. But that brings up some fair questions about this Chiefs team. Yes, we know their season is over this year. They are eliminated from postseason contention, but Patrick Mahomes is dealing with the ACL. He likely will not be back or even 100% next season. What does Travis Kelce's future look like? And it's fair to question if the window is squarely shut on this edition of a Chiefs team that doesn't have very much to be inspired about outside of both Mahomes and Travis Kelce.
Thoughts and prayers if you decided to take a shot during the broadcast yesterday every time they mentioned it could be Kelce's last game, because you're not doing too great today if you did. Absolutely electric, though. You're right. I want to focus on another Christmas Day game. The Cowboys toppled the Commanders in a game that, frankly, didn't have a lot of meaning in the standings. We all know that. But it reminds you of a couple of things. Number one, Dak Prescott was asked why he'd be playing and essentially said, why wouldn't he be playing? And this is a reminder, as I tell everybody all the time, tanking doesn't really exist, especially from the player's mindset. There's no difference in the final standings. There's a small difference, but it means nothing for the rest of history for the Dallas Cowboys. But it still means something to Dak to be out there and play. And in playing, they beat the Commanders 30-23. They beat the Commanders 30-23 with a third-string quarterback that most of you didn't even realize was still in the NFL. This is also a key moment for the league because the fact is there's nothing they can do about Christmas Day scheduling. The schedule is done so far in advance, and it'd be very difficult to flex a game to or off of Christmas Day for everything that means, from broadcast to partners to fans to players, right? That's a difficulty. But this year is going to be a real test. This is one of the biggest rivalries in all of sports and some of the biggest brands that the NFL can offer. And I suspect that these numbers will absolutely topple the NBA. If it doesn't, then maybe there's hope. If it does, man, the NBA needs to take a long look in the mirror and ask how they'll ever compete. The NBA tried to give us the best brands that they could, certainly with the Knicks, the Warriors, the Lakers. They gave us the Spurs versus OKC for all of the reasons that those would be electric matchups. But realistically, even on a standalone streaming service where you can't watch multiple screens at once, where you can't just flip through during commercials, you got no choice but to stay there once you get there. Even on a standalone service, I think we're going to find that a bad football game with absolutely no meaning killed absolutely everybody else. And that's a reminder that all of the conjecture you're hearing right now about the problems with the NFL are all just baseless. At the end of the day, we'll watch it. Even if it's on a streaming service where many people don't like the production and people didn't like the way the broadcast was done, with teams that maybe aren't as good, with no playoffs on the line and players you've never heard of playing quarterbacks, you're still watching it. And that is why the NFL is king. Caroline, let's get to the biggest point we've got right now, and that is some breaking news. Adam Schefter out here, amongst others, reporting that it looks like we have a new front runner Kyle Whittingham has emerged as the focus of Michigan's coaching search. Pete Thamel credited on this particular report. Should be noted, Whittingham had already announced he was stepping away from Utah after 21 seasons. This is also the focus. It's not a done deal as we speak right now, but it is yet again an attempt to match a name with a name program.
Yeah, this was not a name. Kyle Whittingham was not a name that I thought would be even in contention for this job. Frankly, Fitz, because it's hard for me to even picture Kyle Whittingham coaching anywhere other than Utah, where he's been for the last 2 decades. Now, he did say he was stepping away from the program. There's been a coach in waiting to take over the reins for several years, but he never said that he was retiring. And after Michigan, a lot of names have been kind of lingering around the Michigan program. Kalen DeBoer's name, Kenny Dillingham, the head coach at Arizona State, he just signed a contract extension. So I was kind of looking around thinking, who in the world is Michigan going to hire? But I love this. I didn't think Kyle Whittingham was even an option for this job, but I think that this might just be the best name on the market. You look at Kyle Whittingham and what he's been able to do at Utah. When coaches' seats are hotter than ever, when the shelf life for a college football coach is shorter than an avocado, and you have a guy that's been somewhere for 2 decades, that's a testament to him, not just as a coach, but as a person to work with. He's been at Utah for 21 years. You've never heard of a single scandal or any sort of bad PR that's come out of Utah, and he has made Utah a perennial contender for so many years in the Pac-12. Utah has won 10 games consistently under Kyle Whittingham, so I think even though this is a guy that I didn't even think about for this job, he might just be the best one for it. If he does end up getting hired by Michigan, I will love this. I think it would be a home run for the Wolverines.
I think 2 things can be true at the same time. Like right now, it feels like this is a really good hire. For all the reasons you mentioned, I'll add stability. I'll add a grown-up in the room. I'll add somebody that's not going to be overwhelmed by the platform that comes with being the head football coach of Michigan football, somebody that I think is a real calming presence to an entire program. So there's a lot of that I really love about Whittingham, particularly in Michigan. I also think it's fair to acknowledge that if we just rewound time, and I know the world doesn't work this way, but if we went back to the evening of the finish of the game just finishes between Michigan and Ohio State. And in that exact moment, before anybody else had hired anybody, if we had said, okay, of all of the names that could be your head coach next year, it's going to be Kyle Whittingham. I think there would have been a lukewarm response at that point. There is something to a lifer at Utah that has done absolutely incredible work, but there was a coach in waiting for a reason. There was a step away for a reason. So I think 2 things are true here. I agree with you that in this moment, considering everything else in the way the clock had sort of turned itself around, I think Whittingham is a hire that makes a ton of sense. And it's a hire I like a lot. I think in that opportunity, he can have a real opportunity to come in and just sort of normalize Michigan football while also having a lot of success on the field. I think he can accomplish both those things. I just also think that if we went back before any of the names were going anywhere and saying, this is the guy you're going to get, the excitement level will be a little bit more tepid. This is not going to be, to me, in the same level as, oh my God, we just landed Lane Kiffin. But I will remind everybody this important fact. There are only 2 coaches in all of college football that have won a national championship as a head coach, right? So if you are not Ryan Day or Kirby Smart, everybody else is chasing Ryan Day or Kirby Smart. So the real judge here for Michigan is, can Kyle Whittingham compete with Ryan Day, with Kurt Cignetti, with Dan Lanning? I think he can, Caroline. I don't think that he turns around and suddenly makes them worlds better than Sharon Moore was on the sideline. I don't know about that. But I think he can compete with the big boys. He's shown that he can compete with the biggest brands and names in college football. So I think this is a good hire given the circumstance. But I do have to say given the circumstance when I analyze it.
Yeah, and I don't think that winning the hire is necessarily the same as winning the press conference. Is Kyle Whittingham as flashy of a hire as Kalen DeBoer would have been? No, he's not. But that doesn't mean he's the wrong guy for the job. You bring up stability. The Michigan football program needs stability. After everything that they've gone through with the Jim Harbaugh situation, the Connor Stallion situation, and now the Sharon Moore situation, the Michigan football program reputation has been stained. You want somebody that that can bring a better perspective and more stability to that. The other thing is, what is Kyle Whittingham known for? Physical and tough at the lines of scrimmage. He is known for how nasty his defensive fronts have been. That sounds like Big Ten play. That sounds like Michigan kind of play. Tough and gritty and playing great at the lines of scrimmage. So I think that kind of philosophy would fit in flawlessly at Michigan and in the Big Ten.
You're 1,000% right. And now all eyes are going to turn to immediately what is Bryce Underwood or whoever is going to be the quarterback in Michigan next year think of the hire. We have to acknowledge that in this NIL world, quarterbacks are essentially bought, right? So at some point, how will that quarterback room look under Whittingham? Because certainly I don't think you can win at the highest level in the Big Ten without it. What I do know is we will be back Monday morning right here. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you so much for watching Yahoo's Sports Daily. Have a great weekend. Come back Monday.